Yeah, I think honestly, demystified is a good way to describe it. It did feel like, oh gosh, I've never done anything like this before. I could never. It's way past anything I've ever done. And now I'm like, oh no, I feel like I could, implement an AI solution with the libraries and things that are out there. I feel like it's not as scary as I once thought it was.
Welcome to the Forward Slash podcast, where we lean into the future of IT by inviting fellow thought leaders, innovators, and problem solvers to slash through its complexity. Today, we have with us Rachel Clifton. Rachel works with us here at Calibrity. We're going to talk a little bit about, she had a recent experience where she was building a generative AI solution. It was an internal tool we have here at Calibrity. Thought it might be fun to talk about that. Rachel is a senior software developer, mom of two, and wife of a trap rock superstar. Extremely passionate about mental health awareness. So just using this as a shameless plug, that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and 988, the crisis support hotline, supports both calls and texts. If you need help, please reach out. Rachel, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you got to explain this. I had never heard of trap rock before, so I got to hear about this.
Okay, so to be honest, I'm gonna butcher this. I'm gonna show this to my husband. He's gonna be like, "What are you talking about? I can't believe you said this is what that was."
He's a superstar too. Like, come on, you got to get this right, lady.
Okay, so trap is just a particular style of rap and hip hop.
It's loud though, right? It's like there's like some screaming stuff
So
going on.
that's like the rock part. That's the rock part. So
Okay.
trap is just a very particular, not very, but it's a particular style of rap and hip hop music. It's just a genre of music that is in that realm. And then this is like a fusion with harder rock as well. So they have some screams. It's really cool. There aren't a ton of bands out there with this combo style, so it's pretty unique.
I love it. I gotta hear it. So yeah, we're gonna kind of dive into this experience you had with generative AI. So we have a kind of this. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff with AI in the month of May. We're kind of calling it our May I month. That was I came up with that idea, and I was like, usually my ideas get shot down, so I just throw out really silly ones. I don't know how that one made it through, but it worked. It stuck, so we're going with it, right?
I like it.
All right, so I thought if we're doing AI, I wanted, we like to do dad jokes on the show, so I'll tell a dad joke here. So what? A robot walks into a bar. The bartender asks, "What do you have?" The robot says, "Well, it's been a long day and I need to loosen up. How about a screwdriver?"
That is very dad. That is epitome of a dad joke.
I got to use the database line yesterday. I got an email from my daughter's school about a dad's event or whatever, and he had the wrong name. He said, "Hey, Matthew," and I sent him an email back, and I was like, "I think your database is messed up."
No, you didn't.
I sure did. So, yeah.
I'm understanding more and more why your kids roll their eyes at your dad jokes.
Yeah, some pretty bad ones. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into talking about real stuff here, not silly robot jokes and whatnot. You were recently working on. We have an internal tool that we were trying to build here at Calibrity. Tell us a little bit about what even is this thing that you were building?
Absolutely. So what we were working on building is a generative AI solution. So it's called RAG, which I'll just give just like a brief overview of what that even means. It's essentially an AI solution that is using a generative model of information retrieval and the LLM, the large language model. So you're essentially providing this AI, in this case, a chatbot, with a source of documents that we want it to reference when creating its responses. So instead of when you just like go to ChatGPT, you're asking it questions, it is using the entire world that it was trained on. And in this case, for a RAG system, we are processing our own documents and having AI use that as its source of truth and what it's getting information from. for this case, it was a sort of a help chatbot for Calibrity, and it was to be able to look through all of our documents, our posted um, case studies that are online, podcast transcripts just like this,
Hmm.
any blog posts, things like that, in order to help sort of our sales team find relevant material for anything that they need. Um,
That's
so
very
we
cool.
called it Callie. So,
Callie.
mhm, Callie chatbot.
Going back to Callie. So with Callie, so you said it's RAG, so that's retrieval augmented generation, right? So you're retrieving
Yep.
things and okay, we'll get into that further a little bit about what that even means. So you're getting into this, and it sounds like you're just this is old hat for you. You've been doing this for years, and you had all the
Oh no,
expertise and everything, right?
not in the slightest. I had never done anything with AI at all before for development. So I was honestly, when the ask first came up, I was like, I have zero experience with this and I will not be able to do any of it. But at the time, I was in between projects. So I was like, sure, I'll give it a shot. But I was honestly pretty, I was a little overwhelmed and it felt really daunting. The thought of doing this very specific type of AI RAG. I was like, well, what does this even mean? Yeah, I was nervous to say the very least.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there on generative AI, almost too much right now, right? Just
Mhm.
sifting through all of that and knowing what's the garbage and what's the good stuff, right? So yeah, it can be very hard. So how did you get started? What did you how did you kick things off? What did you do?
Well, I was thankfully, I worked with Mary here at Liberty. She gave us some good places to kind of start. There are so many libraries out there. So I'm a Java developer, and so that's what I was writing this solution in. And so thankfully, I was pointed to some various libraries and tools I used for each kind of piece of it. So there's a whole process of it needs to essentially ingest all of the documents in a
Mhm.
way that the LLM is able to use it. And so it was suggested maybe trying PGVector. And there's a whole library that makes that easy,
And PGVector, that's like an extension of Postgres, right? Like the regular old Postgres database to treat it like a
like a
use
vector
vectors. Yeah.
store.
Okay. Cool. I
Yeah.
gotcha.
So um, I was able to use that. And then I'm actually, like I said, I'm a Java developer with Spring. There's actually a Spring AI. So I found that and was like, oh, perfect. Like, hopefully that'll be easy to use. And it was extremely straightforward to create a chat client using Spring AI, that library. It was honestly shockingly easy. I was surprised how easy it was to just build a basic chat system and then expand on it to make it this RAG model.
Okay. So you load up Spring AI and you're getting started. It's like what's kind of the first thing, what the first hurdle? What is the first thing you kind of have to tackle when you're kind of implementing these RAG solutions?
So the first thing is making the vector store, populating it with your data. So um, I wasn't familiar at all with what a vector store is outside of learning vectors when I was in math in school. And so I know that it's, vectors, it's direction, magnitude, relationships to things. And I still don't know the nitty gritty of how a vector store exactly works, but I understand that when you are storing it this way, it's essentially pieces of a document and how they are related to other pieces of other documents, so that the language model is then able to pull relevant information. But so this PG vector, you essentially have to take what I did was I took files and I had to use a document reader. I used a Tika document reader, which just kind of processes the document, splits it into chunks, um, and then mutates it to be applicable to this vector store and then stores it. So that's the first step.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I mean, so you're like you're hitting on a really important part of these RAG solutions. One of the quick hurdles you run into is like, okay, I've got this big old document.
Yep.
How do I break this thing up so that it's like not too little and not tell us a little bit about that. What's kind of involved that chunking mechanism?
Absolutely. So, yeah, so you don't want to store the entire document because there's so much information stored in each and every document. And so, having those relationships, you are splitting the documents into chunks. You don't want to make them too small because if it's, let's just say, a sentence without the context of the sentence around it, it might not make any sense or be able to have a valid relationship to other pieces. If it's too big, you might miss some other relationships. So, depending on your use case, you have to play around with how big of a chunk you are. So you don't want it too big, you don't want it too small, just right. So like that Goldilocks size for your particular solution, your particular documents. So if you are implementing a RAG solution and you notice, oh, I'm missing, it's not pulling back the data I thought it would. It's not referencing what I thought it would. You might have to go and change your sizes of your chunks in order for those relationships to be processed in the way that you are expecting and wanting. Um, Also, for my particular solution, I also wanted the file path. So I wanted to be able to find the file later that it was coming from. So part
Hmm.
of the problem is you are splitting up these documents into chunks. So the I kind of had a struggle with getting my chatbot to access the file path. I had to do so much debugging because I saw the file path in the metadata, but the way that the large language model worked with accessing this data, it only had the text content of the chunk. It did
Hmm.
not have the metadata. So I had to do sort of a kind of, in my opinion, a little bit of a gross implementation of manually adding a string with the words file path and then the name of the file to each and every chunk that I had so that I
Hmm.
could later access that. So, one thing that you also have to kind of battle is what your AI client, your chat client, what that has access to. If there's anything important that you end up missing when you are doing that chunking, you kind of have to keep that in mind as well when you're creating your vector store.
In the way, the reason you wanted that file path, kind of the solution was the idea, since it's to help me find files. That's kind of the idea, that to help me find assets, knowing where to go get that thing, and so I can share it with someone. That's kind of important, as opposed to the chatbot just spitting out just the answer of what you're, and just talking to you. The goal is to actually be able to go get that file. So that was why that was
Yep.
important. Yeah. Okay, so and then I have heard people talk about chunking, and one of the things that people, and I don't know if you even got into this or not, but like they talk about like kind of doing like an overlap, so that you just in case you have a paragraph and it might have some context at the end of the previous paragraph that kind of tees up the next one, so you kind of overlap your chunks together so that you don't lose context between things. Did you get into that at all, or?
So I did not do that at all, but in my research, I did see an option to. It was actually kind of cool. Yeah, it was like almost like you would have the AI create a little bit of like a summary of what came before and what came after, and you
Hmm.
could add that sort of information around the chunk.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, and so I might be misrepresenting it a little bit because I didn't dive into it, but that's what it seemed. It was kind of cool. It was like kind of like adding context for before and after as you're splitting it. But for this implementation, I ended up not really needing to do that. But it is kind of cool the amount of, I guess, customization that you can do with simply this vector store piece of it. It's more than just storing pieces of a document in a database. So it's there's so much that goes on in the background.
Sure.
It's really interesting.
So, okay, so you're able to get up and running very quickly, but I'm guessing it took you 3 or 4 weeks, something like that, to get something actually that works.
Actually, it only took me a couple days. I was shocked at how quickly I was able to get it working. The longest thing was honestly that file path issue that I was trying to debug. I was able to get this chat client set up with this doc. You essentially attach this document store as what's considered an advisor. And with the Spring AI, it is so straightforward that it literally just took me, I think, a day to get something up and kind of running,
Hmm.
but it was, even though I told it not to hallucinate, it was hallucinating file type extensions. So it was telling me that, like, oh, the file name is, XYZ. And I was like, that's literally nowhere, anywhere. Why did you say that? And so honestly, battling that was what took me the next couple days, where I ended up just manually hammering that onto the end of each file type. But getting something actually up and running and starting to work, it only took a day.
Oh, wow. Don't you love how confident the LLMs are with their hallucinations too? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yes.
no, this is absolutely true. I'm telling you, it's true. And then you call them on it. Well, maybe not. Maybe I made something up there. Okay, okay, all right, you caught me. They're
Yeah.
very funny
Well,
that way.
what's actually funny? The first time I tried to call mine on it and be like that's not the name of the file. Like, where's that? They were like, "What file are you talking about?" So that was one thing I realized, where mine didn't have memory.
Uh,
So that was something that I also had to look into, where I had to add on sort of a chat memory advisor, where I added in memory chat, a chat memory, in memory chat memory. And then I was able to actually talk to my chatbot about what it had previously said.
hmm.
Um, but I actually found one thing is that quickly makes your tokens go up, and it quickly costs more money. Um, so I kind of put that memory on pause for a bit while I was refining other things. So I noticed, oh, I'm running through these tokens pretty quickly. But
Yeah, so the way that works is, like, the bigger the request, basically, the more
yep,
text you send to it, it's going to eat up your money, right? You're paying
yep,
by the kind of the token, so to speak,
yeah.
or not, so to
And
speak. That's
granted,
the way they're
this
doing
was still just a couple bucks, but I had only put a couple bucks in it, so
it. Right,
it
right.
was by no means breaking the bank. But
Yeah. What was the most surprising thing that you learned on along your journey with this? I mean, when you dug into this, what was the most surprising thing you learned?
I guess the most surprising thing was how little you have to know about AI to implement the solution. At least with Spring AI, it was very much just similar to calling any other sort of API. You don't have to know the nitty gritty of how large language models work. You don't have to know with the vector store, you don't have to know exactly how all of those work. You just have to kind of know what it does, that the vector store is splitting these it's taking pieces of documents and storing how they relate to each other. You have to know a little bit about, like, the fine tuning aspects, but how it does what it does, it can stay a bit of a black box if you are just wanting to do sort of a basic implementation. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to do anything without really, really understanding how AI works in terms of processing the chunks of the documents, or how it works in having that chat back and forth. But I didn't have to learn any of that nitty gritty to make a functioning solution. That honestly was, I think, the most surprising part.
So you don't have to, like, walk around with, like, a big white overcoat and talk like this, that kind of
Exactly.
stuff. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's
I'm
good.
an
That's
AI
good.
expert. Yeah, and it is nice because then, like I said, I kind of dove into, like, the chunking size and finding my Goldilocks answer to that, and you're able to slowly dive more and more, the more refined you want your model to be, the more you want to make it do exactly how you're wanting it to function, but you don't have to understand it all right away. You can kind of do it piecemeal and understand a little bit more here and there, and then build what you need.
And I think, like, with those solutions, it's not um, just going and grabbing document chunks out of a database and throwing it at the LLM and say, and tell me some good stuff, right? You kind of have to give it a little bit of instructions, and how was your experience with that? How brittle was that? How easy was, like, what about that part?
I would say it was easy and brittle. So it was easy to figure out how to implement this with the Spring AI. So you have a default. You can. sort of add like a default advice that you're able to give it to tell it, hey, like I said, hey, you're an assistant for Calibrity. A user will ask you questions. It's your job to return a list of related files. It was easy for me to find where to give it that information, and also where to add information further about like, hey, this is an example of how I'd like you to return data to me.
Mhm.
It was brittle in that it didn't always listen. Like I had told it to, not if it couldn't find information about anything in particular, to not hallucinate or make it up, to just provide a list of the articles that you found, and it, like I said, it created file names that did not exist. It took a lot of sort of tweaking to get it to actually return a list format of, I found this file that is related, and here's why it's related. So figuring out how to prompt the chat client to respond to me in the way that I want, it took sort of a lot of tweaking, and it's still not perfect. And I don't, it's hard. It was hard for me to figure out how to get it to behave exactly as I wanted it to. Um, but it was easy to figure out where to do that
Mm.
if it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense.
And I think you hit on one of the like this kind of a cool technique, and they call it so that the general term is like, what is it? In context learning, I think is the general term for it. And you'll hear it referred to as like zero shot or one shot or few shot. And what you were doing by saying, hey, I'm asking you a question, here's an example of what I want you to respond with, that's the one shot, right? When you do multiple of those, that's few shot, right? So you're letting the model learn what you need in the context that you send it. That's the concept. But that's one of those techniques that you have to kind of do. And yes, it can be a little brittle, and you got to worry about those hallucinations. So that's always fun. So since you had that experience with Callie and digging in, have you had any chance to kind of poke around with anything that did any further learning or reading or anything like that? Have you had any opportunity to do any of that?
I haven't, but I definitely feel more comfortable if I were to dive in more in the future. But I started a project and kind of just dove right into that. So a project assignment at work.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I have sort of left my Cali and AI research a little bit behind, but I feel a lot more confident if anything were to come up at my job in the project that's like, hey, this has to do with AI. It feels a lot less daunting, um, than if I were told to do that or asked to do that at a client without this little taste.
So you haven't had an opportunity to go back to Cali. I'm sorry. I just love that name. I like LL Cool J. What can I say? Can't help myself. And so if you are, and you kind of hinted at it a little bit, there's a big trend right now of kind of demystification trend in the market when it comes to AI and generative AI in particular. But would you consider yourself demystified at this point, that you've kind of gone through the journey and it wasn't as scary as you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I think honestly, demystified is a good way to describe it. It did feel like, oh gosh, I've never done anything like this before. I could never. It's way past anything I've ever done. And now I'm like, oh no, I feel like I could, implement an AI solution with the libraries and things that are out there. I feel like it's not as scary as I once thought it was.
Yeah. So even if it was a more complex type of a thing you needed to build, you would be able to you'd be able to take a running start at it and be very confident that you could tackle it, so to speak.
Yeah, I think so. The resources that are out there, I did this purely just through finding documentation and examples online. So if I were to dive sort of, if there was something more complicated, I'm sure that, even doing like a tutorial or watching videos or something more in depth, I barely had to, I was so shallow. I did not dive deep at all and was able to do this. So, um, yeah, I feel like with the resources that are out there, in addition to the libraries, I could create a more fine-tuned, complex solution, if needed.
So we should probably start our ship it or skip it round. We have a section of the podcast, a segment of the podcast, if you will, that we call Ship It or Skip It.
Ship or skip, everybody, we gotta tell us if you ship or skip.
Okay, so the idea here is it's kind of like hot or not, right? Like, is this yes, let's go with it, or no, let's not. I think we talked a little bit about this, but I would maybe sometimes people were like, it depends, or maybe they'll kind of couch their answers. But like, what about getting formal AI training? Like really, going into understanding things a lot more at a lot more deep level. Do you think that's a ship it? Like, if you had the time, would you do that? Like, or is it a skip it? Like, nah, you're never going to need it. Just go on with it.
I think, honestly, if we're going to do just like a hot take blurb, it's going to be skip it. But I will add some sort of more details there. So I think if you're just getting started and if you're wanting to implement something that isn't extremely complex, skip it. You don't need to know it all. You don't need to really do formal training. You can just, like I had kind of mentioned, you can keep it a black box until there are pieces that you need to fine tune and you can dig in a little bit more there. However, if AI is something that you're really interested in, I think that the getting sort of some more formal learnings is almost necessary just because of how much is going on. Like inside that black box, I'm sure like it seems I can kind of tell like it's going to be some pretty complicated things happening. And if you really want to understand that and you really want to um, know that, I don't know if just by Googling and just, reading, random documentation about it will get you to sort of an expertise level of what's really going on. I don't think that's necessary to develop using AI. I don't. So, kind of two sides of the same coin, I guess. But
We get a lot of those answers because we have a lot of people who are architects, and they're like, it
yes.
depends, right? You get those architect answers. I agree with you. I think, I heard a phrase the other day. Somebody said it was, let the complexity earn its place in your solution. I love that, the
I
way that was
like
phrased.
that.
So
I like
I think
that.
that's really cool. And I agree. Like, as you said, treating it as a black box, it works. I can get something, a solution together that adds value to my life, makes my life easier without having to dig into it. Okay, that's great. Now, of course, ours was an internal tool, and if anything went wrong, it's not really, no planes are flying out of the sky, falling out of the
Yeah.
sky or anything. But yeah, I mean, there would be some due diligence if it was a more, polished product or something, of course. But yeah, I think from a business case standpoint, there you can get a lot of bang for the buck with very minimal investment up front, right? You can get
Hmm.
quite a bit of value out of these things. So I agree with you. Now, I'm a math nerd, right? I mean, and I know you are too, right? Like
Yes.
yeah. So very much a math nerd. So it would be interesting to see if you did do a deep dive, how much you would geek out on the math involved. But yeah, I don't think you don't need to know linear algebra. Like, you don't have to like have a bunch of GPUs flying around, heating up your house or anything like to do these things. It really is fairly simple. So.
Yeah.
All right. So the next ship it or skip it question, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit, but like I'm sure, everybody's kind of encountered this if you're a developer. A lot of the tools nowadays are incorporating AI. Do you leverage that? Did you leverage that? What was your experience of that? And do you say, yes, this is good stuff, or like, oh my gosh, it's a hot mess? What do you think?
I think, yes, it is good stuff, but not to just blindly use and accept. It's nice when you have to do some kind of boilerplate, repetitive code. I've noticed it can kind of pick up on things and be correct. The number of times that it has tried to autocomplete my code to utter garbage is just it's a lot. I would say the amount of it's probably a 50-50 split if whether it's helpful or if I'm just like, why did you even suggest this?
Mm-hmm.
Please go away. So I would say it can be helpful if you're trying to just get rid of some, repetitive things that you have to do, like when you're writing tests and things like that. It can be helpful because it picks up on what you've tested before. But then there are times when I'm writing code and it is just it makes a suggestion that seems like it's out of left field. And so if I were to just blindly accept, like, oh yes, cool, you just suggested a whole helper method for me, it's named exactly as I'm what I need it to do, cool, let's go with it, but not actually look at what it's doing. No,
Yeah.
you definitely need to be taking it as a starting place and go through everything that it puts out, because I don't know where it gets some of these ideas from.
It's really funny. So I recently went through a lot of this. I'm writing a little side project, and I was using ChatGPT and then the built-in thing in my IDE as well. And it's funny. Some of the things is like, wow, that was really nice. Thank you very much. Right. And then
Yeah,
it works
yeah.
perfectly out of the box. But the number of times where it's like especially with like testing, I like to use it for testing. It helps me write tests very
Yep,
quickly. I
yep.
can usually pick up on good patterns there. But like it was trying to generate a test, and I'm like, no, that's not the test I want. And I deleted it and I wrote the test that I wanted. And then I'm like, okay, let's go to the next test. So it suggested that same exact test again. Like, oh no, I really want to do this, right? And I'm like, no, that's not. I don't want to do that. Like, it kept doing it over and over. I'm like, how do you get stuck in this
Stubborn.
loop? Like, yeah. And then same thing with like documentation. Like it is usually pretty good about, like if it's Java. So if you do like a Java doc or, just a documentation block for a piece of code, and you start, you begin the block, and it'll kind of generate and say, well, this is the documentation. A lot of times it's good, but a lot of times when it's wrong, again, it's stubborn. It gets mad that you don't take its suggestions. So I don't know, I'm anthropomorphizing or whatever. And then like, I'm like, no, that's not what this method's doing. Like, and then I type out what it's doing, and okay, fine, I'll help you complete your thought. Fine. And then I go to the next method. It tries the same stupid docs for that, and it has nothing to do with the code. Like, no, I don't want that. Don't give it to me. So and then the other thing that I found is when it's wrong, again, the hallucination, it's convincing. And then the particular library I was working on it did involve some math. And it's like, yep, here's the algorithm. Here you go. Perfect. Ready to go. This is going to rock. And then it pats you on the back and says, you're doing such a great job, So
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. And then I'm running tests and all that. I'm like, man, there's something wrong with this. And I paste the same exact code it generated back to it. And I say, are we sure about this? Oh no, that's got a bug. This is wrong right here. Like it corrected itself. It knew it was wrong. Like, why'd you give it to me?
Yeah. That's the best, when it corrects itself.
Yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, I completely told you the wrong thing there. Yeah. I would say overall though, I would say I'm kind of a ship it, but I'm with you. Like you can't just blindly do this stuff. It is not ready to take over our world completely yet. Right. It's definitely got a long way to go.
And I do have qualms with my IDE, because once it started implementing the AI autocomplete, it stole my keyboard shortcut for just like auto completing the variable name or the class name. So I used to click tab, just like it was like, oh, cool, it's in the drop down. It knows I'm about to select XYZ class. I click tab, and instead it auto completes this AI line. And I'm like, oh, shoot, back. So I'm sure, I know there's a setting to change it, and it's irritating enough that I get frustrated, but not irritating enough that I am going to change the shortcut back.
Developers
so
are
I just
weird
complain
creatures.
about it.
We are very weird creatures. It's funny, like one little thing can make us mad, and we're like, I'm going to write an entire library to solve this problem. And then there's another thing that bugs us every single day, and we just I'm going to live with that. Yeah.
Yep. And still not learn. Like I've had this AI on here for, I want to say, a year, and I still will click tab to complete. I just can't click enter. I don't know why.
That's a trip. All right, so we do have a fun section of our show we call our lightning round. Now, this is the very it's fun, but it is serious. Like there are correct answers to these questions, so you want to we can't share them with you ahead of time because I don't want you chat GPTing this and getting the right answer. So these are ones that we will spring on you, and then it is important that you take it seriously because you will be graded. one. Ariel or Jasmine?
Jasmine.
Fair enough. My dog's name's Jasmine. I'll go with that. Favorite number?
93.
93. Probably the year you were born.
Nope. Do you want to know?
Well, sure. Yeah. Why is it 93?
Because current in this day and age, an A is 90 to 100 or 91 to 100 or whatever. But when I was in school, it was the 7 point. So 93 was the lowest you get for an A. So it just became my. I don't know. It's like you wanted to get a 93 or above. So 93 became my favorite number.
I was in that 93 era myself. Yeah. When my kids were like, oh, I got a 90, I got an A. I'm like, no, you didn't. No, that's a
right?
B. That's not even a B plus. Like, that's
right?
a B. Like, yeah. They're a little easy on these kids. Anyway, back in my day, right? Okay. What's your favorite carb? Bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes?
All of the above.
All of the above. Yes, that's surprising. Mm-hmm. That's the right answer, actually.
Yep.
How many cups of coffee do you drink a day?
Cups of coffee. I drink 1 cup of coffee, but I have 2 or 3 cups of caffeinated beverages.
All right. What's the maximum number of spritzes of perfume before it's too much?
I would say it depends, but no matter what, 3 would be the max.
Like, never go to 4 is what you're saying, but 3
exactly.
4 is right out, as they said in Monty Python. Okay, I got it. Mm-hmm. I like it. For a journal, if you're journaling, do you like to do it on paper or on a digital format, like a computer or something?
I like both. I think they both have their place for different types of journaling. But I think pen and paper is what I prefer.
I guess it depends on what I'm journaling about. Or like note taking, I guess, is one thing I do a lot of, right? But yeah, if I'm trying to recall something, if I want to be able to recall it, I find pen and paper to be
yes.
Like, if I want it to stick in my brain, pen and paper is so much better for me.
Yep.
What's the most boring thing ever?
Generative AI. I'm just kidding.
So easy, it's boring.
The most boring thing ever. I don't know. Is this a question you ask a lot of people? Do people have things that they think are boring?
I don't think I've ever asked anyone that question before. I didn't. It is kind of a tough one to think of, like, what is the most boring thing ever?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very impatient person, so a lot of things are boring to me.
Oh.
Maybe treadmill running for me. I don't like running on the
treadmill one. That's the worst.
That's awful. Yeah. Okay.
I'll steal that answer. That's fine. That'll
work. All right. This one's an interesting one. This gets some different answers. We have asked this before. What temperature do you like your thermostat at?
Oh, okay. 72.
72.
Yeah.
All right.
No, my rock star husband and I disagree. Yeah.
All right. This is fantastic. So that concludes. You did very well. I must say. I was surprised at how well. Honestly, I think it's the best ever. Honestly.
Oh, well, thank you.
No,
I'm sure you say that to all your guests.
I do. Yeah. So I know you mentioned something about in your bio about May being Mental Health Awareness Month. Anything closing reflections, thoughts about that in particular? I know that's an area of passion for you.
Yeah, I would just say to anyone out there listening that you matter, you are important, and you are not alone. So many people have gone through or are actively going through struggles with mental health. So please reach out, even if you feel like you are the only one or nobody cares. People do care. And that 988 number, like I said, sometimes texting is easier. Just reaching out to that instead of calling. Reach out to a friend, a family member. You are loved and you are important, and there is hope.
And there is not an AI on the other side of that line. That's a person.
Correct.
That's
It is a person. It is trained crisis counselors. So
Yeah, you will not get the runaround like you do with all these chatbots these days. So,
Correct.
okay, awesome. Well, thank you, Rachel, so much. This was great.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Always enjoy chatting with you. We enjoyed having you on. Welcome back anytime.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
If you'd like to get in touch, drop us a line at /@caliberty.com. The / podcast is created by Caliberty. Our director is Dylan Courts, producer Ryan Wilson, with editing by John Corey and Jeremy Brown. Marketing support comes from Taylor Blessing. I'm your host, James Carman, and thank you for listening.